can you guys let me know if you can see the screen? You put a 2 in the chat if you can see the screen. All right, cool. All right, thanks guys. So yeah, today's topic is the compound effect, and I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of how you can actually implement this into your life, as well as get the benefits from it. So there is actually a formula for the compound effect and how you can actually create your own compound effect within the habits that you have in your life. So the formula for the compound effect is small choices plus consistency plus time actually leads to significant results. So when it comes to the small habits, these are the things that are, the choices that you make in your morning routine. So the habits that you have per day, usually if you do have a morning routine, are where the habits that you have are normally formed in the morning routine if you do have a morning routine, right? So how can we actually use these morning routine habits to get to where we want to go? The way that we do this is to change our habits, right? So how do we actually change habits and actually do it so that they stick and that they are, going to stay with us throughout this journey? So the way you want to do it is you want to work on 3 at a time. But when you're working on habits, you want to remember that in order to change a habit properly, you're going to have to take an old habit that you want to replace and replace it with a new one. Because if you don't replace it with a new one, you're just going to take away an old habit, and it's going to kind of lead a void, which is going to make you more likely to go back and do the old habit again. So make sure when you're replacing habits, you actually replace it with a better one. And that's what's going to help you actually change habits faster and maintain the changed habit as well. So yeah, you want to work on 3 at a time. Don't try and change too many too quickly. And then remember that when you're changing your habits, you're actually changing the way you operate. You're changing what you do, and you're changing who you kind of are. And you're literally changing the kind. I guess you could say you're changing your paradigm through changing your habits. Yeah, one of the action steps I want you guys to take is to prove that yourself that you can be consistent with 3 habits for 7 days in a row. So maybe you want to change the habit of sleeping in and you want to replace it with waking up early. You want to change the habit of not working out or lying around for ages and replace it with actually getting up and moving. And then maybe you want to change another one. I'll come on to that in a sec. But remember that only add more habits after you prove to yourself that you can do it for 7 days in a row. So it would look something like this. So for the first week of you doing this challenge, let's call it a challenge, you're going to choose 3 habits that you want to create, the small choices throughout your day that you're going to decide that you are actually going to get done. So for example, reading, meditation, and listening to an audio. These might be the first 3 habits that you start with. And then after you prove to yourself that you can do these for 7 days in a row, this is when you can add another habit to the list. So after a week of doing these 3 habits for every single day, you can then add a 4th habit. So for the next week, it might look like reading, meditation, listening to an audio, and then journaling. And then the next week after that, after you've proved to yourself that you can add journaling for 7 days, this is when you can add a different habit. So this is a way that you can actually compound the habits that you're creating and make sure they actually last. However, we have to remember that creating new habits is a double-edged sword because the compound effect works both ways. So if we're compounding negative habits, then that can lead down a negative road. But if we're compounding positive habits, that can actually take us to where we want to go. So what I'm actually going to show you here is what can happen when we take, positive habits. Let's just get this one. So let's say you start on a baseline here. This is you, and every day you're taking positive habits to get you to where you want to be. So every day that you take the positive habits, you create a new step. You create a new step every single day that you take positive habits. And this is where the compound effects come in. Because after a while, you will be so far ahead that you don't even remember the time that you were back there, because it seems like it can either seem so long ago or seem so quick that you've developed all these habits. But as long as you're consistent, you're going to keep growing and elevating, right? So this is when you compound positive habits. Okay, let's go on the next slide. Ooh, what's going on here? Right, so now let's show you what can happen. There we go. So this is now what can happen when you are compounding negative habits. So let's say you have two people, right? You have person A who is compounding positively, and then you have person B who is compounding negatively. So person A, as I showed you, is gonna, be going up the ladder, who's gonna be increasing the blessings into their life. Now person B might be compounding the negative habits, so they're going down. Now what we need to realize is that when you compound positive habits, that's going to eventually lead to a breakthrough when you keep it up for long enough. But you can also have a negative breakthrough from compounding the negative habits too much. So, is this gonna work? Yeah, so negative habits such as, sleeping in, missing the trainings that have been held, not reading the books, overthinking, even doubting can be a negative habit, having a lack of belief, especially with trading, and being an emotional trader is a negative habit, and having an ego as well. So when we compound these negative habits every single day, this is what can lead to the negative breakthroughs, as I mentioned. This is what can lead to people hitting rock bottom or even like losing ranks, because they're compounding the wrong things, which is going to affect the business that they're having, which is going to affect the people around them, So, and also another thing to mention, is it on this one? Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to get rid of the drawing because it's kind of annoying. But remember what the drawing looks like. Okay. So when we compound negative habits, right? Think of it as an extra step that we have to take in order to reach the baseline again, to then be able to compound the positive habits. So it's kind of like a stairs going from the ground floor into like a basement. Once you're in this area, this is where you have to then climb back up to get to the ground floor before you can then go up to the top floor, you know what I mean? So it's this idea of having a debt to the universe. So every day that you don't pay the price of what you say you want, then that means you have debt to pay. So how much debt, think about how much debt you have to pay. Like, how many times have you said that you would do something and you haven't done it? That means that that's debt you have to pay. How many times have you felt stuck because you haven't actually, with feeling stuck, it's not always necessarily the thoughts you're having. It could just be it could just be that you have so much debt to pay that you haven't seen any results because you're still paying off the debt. Even if you went hard for 90 days, you can still have debt to pay because you spent too long, not doing the things that you were meant to do in order to get to where you want to be. So think about this for a minute. If you have been feeling stuck recently and you have been, doing everything that you need to do and, trying to get the results you want, it could just be that you have a little bit more debt to pay. That's why you should never stop what you're doing. You should always keep going, because you might just be on the verge of paying off the debt, and then the next week or so you could continue doing the same things, and this is where you're going to have like a little breakthrough, and this is the breakthrough of starting back at zero. So then you're going to see some positive habits being created, right? Going up the stairs to the top floor. And also remember that when we're feeling stuck, we're not actually stuck. It's because we're having the same negative habits, and negative habits come from our thought processes, don't they? So if you're having a negative habit of sleeping in, missing trainings, overthinking, doubting, having a lack of belief, this is because your thoughts are not in the right place. And we have to remember that our thoughts create our emotions, which create the actions, which create the results eventually. So you could even be having debt in the spiritual. You could be, think about it this way, for all of the thoughts that you've had that were not constructive, that were not going to build you up and empower you to go and get to the next level, that's now more debt that you have on your back. So now you have to be extra positive. You have to be, you have to be saying every single day, say your goals out loud. You have to believe it 100%. And only once you get to this level, it's going to start, paying off the debt faster, and then actually getting back to the level playing field that you were at to start with. Okay, so I like to call it being overwhelmed in action debt. And I like to think, well, I don't really like to think, but with my journey so far in the last year or so that I've been with I have noticed that I have a lot of debt to pay, because for the last however many months I didn't really know about this stuff. So now that I know about this stuff, I can actually take steps to make sure that I'm paying my debt off every single day. And that's actually how I managed to get a breakthrough with trading. That's how I managed to get a breakthrough with, becoming more confident in talking to people as well. So when you're overwhelmed in debt, it's literally all about taking action. If you're not going to do the actions that you need to take, that's just another day of debt. And I actually heard about this universal debt idea back in March, I think it was. And since then I have been, working to clear this debt, and only now have I started seeing the results. So that's more than 90 days. I'll admit it wasn't a full blown effort every single day, but I still kind of had this in the back of my mind, I need to do this so that I don't have any more debt to pay. So how do you actually get out of debt? So we need to remember that for the compound effect to work, it is small choices plus consistency plus time, which actually leads to the significant results. So in order to see any change, we have to make sure the debts have been cleared first. So when you actually start seeing changes in your life, when you start seeing changes in your trading, when it starts to click, when it starts to make sense, that's when you know the debt's been paid off, right? But how do you actually, if you are in debt, how do you actually come to the starting point again? So you have to compound these small habits from your morning routine consistently every single day. So start from the very bottom and work your way back up those stairs. Start doing the habits that you need to do every single day. Start adding more habits into your life that are going to be, that are income producing habits, that are habits that are going to rewire the way you think to a more positive way. If you give your word to something, make sure you stick to that word, because the word, when you give your word to something, that's one of the most powerful things that you can give. Okay, and remember to stay true to the vision that you have for your life, and also the vision of the organization as well. And all you have to do is show up every day and complete the same habits every single day, and consistency and time will actually take us to the significant results. So the thing to remember is that if you do what's easy now, your life will be hard later. So with this, think of it like this. If you do what's easy, which is, staying asleep, which is missing the trainings if you're busy, which is not bothering to read the books that you need to read, which is, not trying to get rein on your thoughts and actually control the thoughts you're trying to have. If you're gonna keep doing what's easy now, then it's all gonna catch up to you eventually, because of the debt that you're gonna have to pay in order to get to what you want. That's one thing I found, right? I was doing the easy thing every single day. And now when I actually want to make a change, when I actually get fed up, I realize that I have to do so much more work than what I could have just done from the start. Okay. And remember that if you do what's hard now, if you do what people are not willing to do right now, actually I can't remember that quote, I'll think of it in a sec. If you do what's hard now, your life will be easy later. So if you do the things, oh yeah, that was it. It was if you do the things that the hang on, let me see if I can find it. I think it was something like, successful people do the things that the unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. So again, it comes into willpower, right? How willing are you to actually make this work for yourself? How willing are you to create the new habits? How willing are you to get out of the debt that you have to pay in order to then even get to the ground level? That's like get back to the starting point, and then you have to be even more willing to go through what it takes to get to the top. Okay, and also remember why you're doing this. The reason why you're doing this should be enough to fuel you to want to change your habits, to want to develop yourself into a better person, and to want to level yourself up and create a compound effect in your life. Okay, so that is the training for today. If you got value, can you put some 3s in the chat? And yeah, I just want to say thank you for jumping on, guys. Tag me on Instagram if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next week on